Okay, so today, for a multitude of reasons, I am doing a spoiler-free and spoiler review of this book, Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer, which is practically book 1.5 in the Twilight Saga series. This is an adult fantasy paranormal book that I gave an overwhelming 5 stars to. So I split up my spoiler-free and spoiler reviews into those two exact sections. The first part of the video is the spoiler-free section, where I'll discuss with you my thoughts and feelings in a spoiler-free way. Then in the second half of the video, or part of the video, because I don't know when we'll get to it, but the second part of the video, we will dive deeply into spoilers. So, if you have not read Midnight Sun, then stick around, because we're jumping into the spoiler-free section first. If you have read it, enjoy the spoiler-free section, and then we'll jump right into spoilers. Quick spoiler warning, ironically, before we jump into the spoiler-free section, but if you have not read the first book in the Twilight Saga series called Twilight, the titular book for the series, if you have not read that book or seen that film or have any idea at all about what Twilight, the book, is about, the first book in the series, you may be spoiled in the spoiler-free section. The reason for this is because Midnight Sun is a retelling of that exact book from the perspective of the love interest of the protagonist in that book. So, unpacking that, making it a little more simple in case you haven't read either. In the first book in the Twilight Saga series, Twilight, we follow Bella Swan. To keep it incredibly spoiler-free, at some point very early along the way, Bella meets a guy that she falls for by the name of Edward Cullen. In this book, Midnight Sun, we go through all the same events that happened in the Twilight book from Edward's perspective. In the original book, Twilight, we go through it from Bella's perspective. So it's hard to, even in a spoiler-free way, discuss my thoughts on Midnight Sun without spoiling Twilight. So if you there will be no spoilers here for New Moon, book 2, sorry. There will be no spoilers here for Eclipse. There will be no spoilers here for Breaking Dawn. But if you have not read Twilight, you might be spoiled for Twilight watching even the spoiler-free section. Okay. So, the way that my spoiler-free section works is that I start off telling you the premise of the book, which I've practically already done. There's really not a lot else to add to the premise of this book other than this is literally Twilight being told from the perspective of Edward. There's really not anything else I need to say. Then in the spoiler-free section, I give you 3 pros and 3 cons for the book to help you determine if this is the right book for you. Then we jump into the spoilery section where I get to rant or rave, depending on how I feel about the book. With this one, it'll be a rave in the spoilery section in a very spoiler-filled way, and I cannot wait to get to that point. But let's go and jump right into the pros and cons section of the spoiler-free section. So yeah, just once again, said it too many times already, but let's make it official. The premise of Midnight Sun, book 1.5 in the Twilight Saga series by Stephanie Meyer, is that we follow Edward's perspective and go through practically everything we went through in Twilight, book 1 in the series. Here's the pros and cons. So, what I used to do was go back and forth and say my first con is this, and then after that say my first pro is this, because it's always better to end on a pro. What I'm going to do this time round is I'm going to give you all 3 cons and then all 3 pros, because if it's better to end on a pro, it's even better and much, much better, shout out to Legally Blonde the Musical, so much better, to end with 3 pros as opposed to ending with 1. So, let's go into the cons section. For me personally, this book did not contain any cons at all. So therefore, the 3 cons I've come up with are implied cons. You may view this as a con, and as I'm doing the spoiler-free section to assist you to see if you should pick up this book, I'm going to tell you these things in a con way, as it may be a con for you. The very first con that is very obvious the moment you pick up the physical book, and I have the physical book in my hands right now. I'm literally holding it, is its length. Book Midnight Sun is 756 pages long. That is 756, which is not only more than 500, but is 256 whole pages more than 500, meaning not only is this book a tome, which is a book that is 500 pages plus, but it's 250 pages longer than a tome, which makes it a tome and a half. Yeah, it is massive. Now, if you want a comparison, the original story, Twilight, told by Bella's perspective, is in fact 434 pages. Massive difference. Twilight is not even a tome. Midnight Sun is a tome and a half. So it is much, much longer. Bear that in mind, because for some people, longer books are just not encouraging to read. I mean, it's less pages than your Stormlight Archives by Mr. Brandon Sanderson, who likes to start off book one at 1,000 pages and then go up in page count for every subsequent book he releases. But compared to your standard books that would be on the very high end, about 400 pages or less, 750 pages, or 756 pages is a lot to get through. Very quickly, just so you know, different editions are going to have different page counts. My edition is the Atom, A-T-O-M edition of their paperback. So the Atom paperback is 756 pages long. If you are going to be looking at ordering or borrowing a different edition to mine, then just look it up on Goodreads what the edition is that you're looking for, because Goodreads have all the editions there, and they'll tell you how long your book will be. But mine is 756 pages long, which is freaking ridiculous, to be honest. So yeah, like, I was very shocked when this book arrived. I purchased the book, and it's great. It goes really well with the set, which is not a pro that I've listed. So I'm just going to tell you this here in this quick section. If you have the other Atom paperback editions or hardcovers, and then you order the hardcover of this one, I assume, it goes really well. So we have the black backgrounds with the outstanding symbol on the cover. So, for example, we have hands holding an apple on Twilight. We have a rose that appears to be bleeding, or part red, part white, either way, for New Moon. We have a ribbon for Eclipse, and we have a chessboard for Breaking Dawn. And on the cover of Midnight Sun, we continue to have that black background, and the symbol for this one is a pomegranate. I hope I'm saying that right, because it's not a word that I use in my day-to-day life, but I think you pronounce it pomegranate. If I'm wrong, let me know. But anyway, so yeah, it goes really well with the collection, but Midnight Sun is the same length as this edition of Midnight Sun, is the same length as book 4 in the entire series, which is 756 pages. So it makes you wonder. And it made me wonder, and I'm going to tell you this right away in, actually, I will tell you this in my second con. So, there you go. Con number 1, it's 756 pages, it's a tome and a half that may encourage you or discourage you to pick up the book, because different readers have different perspectives on whether or not to read a book based on its page count. Some readers don't care. Some readers really do care if it's over a certain amount of pages, and it will take you longer to read than a standard book that's 400 pages or less. So just bear that in mind. If you're wanting to read it, it's going to take you a lot longer to get through than a standard book. Are you willing to put in that time? If yes, great. Purchase the book. Okay, con number 2 is that despite the fact that it is 756, a tome and a half pages long, it is only a retelling of book 1, Twilight. Which to me makes no sense, because when I first got this book, when I first purchased the book, I did not look at the page count. And I thought it would be like 350 pages or something. Boy, was I way off, because if you double 350, you get 700. And then there's still 56 pages to add on to get the total page count of this book. So I was way off on what I thought it was going to be. And so when I finally got the book, I looked at it and went, wow, this is a lot longer than I thought it would be. 756 pages. Why is it 756 pages? And then I thought, oh, it must be Edward's life story. So it must be that we follow Edward. You know, Edward is born. We see Edward as a child before. Here comes your first Twilight spoiler, by the way. So be warned. It's spoiler-free for Midnight Sun, but spoilery for Twilight, book 1. Before he is turned into a vampire, so we get to see him as a mortal, as a human, and then we see him turn into a vampire. Who turned him? Let's answer that question. I'm sure that question has been answered, and I just don't remember who the heck turned him, honestly. But anyway, we find out who turned him. We'll see him struggle being a new vampire, you know, before he's, you know, where we first met him in Twilight, where he was much more used to being a vampire, and yeah, everything he went through with that, and then him meeting Bella, and then we'll probably get some highlights of Twilight, then we'll get some highlights of New Moon, then we'll get some highlights of Eclipse, and then we'll get some highlights of Breaking Dawn, and we may even get an epilogue to the epilogue of Breaking Dawn, and it will be just an amazing, like, kind of chronicle all in one book that details every single book in the entire series from Edward's perspective. Nay, sir, absolutely not. This is only a retelling of book 1. And it's 756 pages long. Now, something else I want to add to that, because this is not my third con, is I'm going to actually flip this and tell you what my third con is now, and then replace that with what I was going to say a moment ago. So I'm going to add to this that this book is marketed as a YA paranormal fantasy, and the first 4 books in the series read like a YA paranormal fantasy. To me, other readers may experience it differently, but to me, Midnight Sun does not read as a YA book. It reads to me as an adult book. Now, the reason this makes sense to me is because Edward has been around for a very long time. He may look, I think they're trying to say he's like 17 or something in the book. He may look 17, but he's 100 and whatever old he is. He's very, 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 very old. He's been around for a very, very, very long time. He has lived many, 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 many different life experiences over the course of his incredibly long life. So it would make sense that this would have an adult tone to it, because it's from Edward's perspective, rather than the YA approach that we have to the first 4 books that are from Bella's perspective. So it is marketed as YA, but it comes across as an adult tone, not a YA one, in my opinion. That does not detract from the book, because I embraced it thinking, okay, we're getting Edward's perspective, so it makes sense to me. But if that's something that may not work for you, then just be mindful. There is certainly an adult tone, in my opinion, but on Goodreads, it is marketed as a YA, so go figure. The third, now updated to be third, spoiler-free con that I'm going to give you for this book is that I hope you like book 1 of Edward's retelling, because there ain't going to be no book 2, 3, or 4. Yeah, I would rather tell you this now than talk about it in the spoilery section. I'll tell you right now, because to me, I don't think that this is, you know, a spoiler, because it's a retelling of Twilight. So Edward does not die in this book, so certainly Stephanie Meyer could continue to write Edward's perspective for each subsequent book. But she has said, I did my research because I want to find out when the retelling of New Moon was coming out, because how amazing, if you read New Moon, how amazing would it be to read Edward's perspective of New Moon? Oh my gosh, I want to read that. And there is this like short 4-page pamphlet, if you can even call it that. It's definitely not a novella, it's way too short, that you can read, but that's not what I wanted. I want the entire book of New Moon. I want to see what Edward's going through in New Moon. But anyway, letting that go. Okay. Stephanie Meyer has gone on record as saying that she will not do Edward's perspective in any of the subsequent books because it's too hard for her emotionally. Edward's character is way too taxing on her emotionally to write. Understandable. Absolutely understandable. If you want to learn more about that, certainly feel free to look it up online. There are a number of places that discuss it, so it's definitely easily available for you to look into, but that's the long and short of it. I hope you like book 1, because there ain't going to be no 2, 3, or 4 of Edward's retelling, because Stephanie Meyer just doesn't want to write them, because emotionally she just can't. Okay, now let's talk about the pros because there are so many to talk about and we're already over halfway through this video, so let's jump along rather quickly with the pros. My first pro for this book in a spoiler-free way is all those things you wondered about when Edward's not with Bella in Twilight, they are all addressed, and oh my gosh, it is so amazing. You know, have you ever read a book that is a dual or multi-perspective and you just keep thinking, you know, I know we have to. Let's think. Yeah. So not dual. Sorry, not dual or multi. Have you ever read a singular perspective book that has more than one main character, but you're only following one character? And all you can think is, I know that so-and-so that we are following the perspective of needs to go home and sleep right now, but I really wish we could follow, I'm thinking of a romance for some reason here, but the love interest instead, because what they're going off to do right now seems a lot more interesting to me than our protagonist going home and going to bed and going to sleep. Like, I really don't care about that. I would much prefer to see what the other one's doing over there. In this book, in Midnight Sun, you get that. When Bella goes home, which most of the time when Bella goes home, she goes home to go to bed. When Bella goes home to go to bed, we follow what Edward is doing. And sometimes Edward is with Bella, sometimes Edward is not with Bella, and in the moments when he's not with Bella, one of the most amazing pros of this book is every time he's not with Bella, it is addressed in this book where he went, what he did, the questions are answered, and it is so satisfying. Pro number 2 for the spoiler free is the family dynamic between all of the Cullens is absolutely wonderful. We get to see the family dynamic play out of the Cullens from Bella's perspective. But it is one thing to look at this family of, this makeshift family, if you will, of vampires, from the perspective of someone who effectively at the beginning is a stranger to this family, compared to what this family are like when the stranger is not there and everyone that is there, they're all used to each other, so they act as you normally do when you're around people you know, as opposed to a stranger being there and encroaching on your space. And that was a massive pro for me to watch Edward hang around with all of his family, and yeah, seeing all of those dynamics play out. I will talk spoilers very soon. Trying to be mindful this is spoiler free, but that was fantastic. I gobbled all of that up. And my third and final spoiler-free pro is hearing almost everyone's thoughts. Just because, for those of you who don't know, in Twilight, it is revealed that Edward can, I don't know if it's referred to as Edward is a mind reader or he can hear others' thoughts, but I'm wording it as he can hear others' thoughts. Edward can hear others' thoughts. He can't hear Bella's. He can't hear Bella's. I'm not going to say why, because that would be a massive spoiler. But anyway, he can't hear Bella's, but he can hear everyone else's. Because in Twilight we follow Bella, we can't hear anyone's thoughts because Bella can't hear anyone else's thoughts. But in Midnight Sun, the table is flipped and we follow the character who can hear other people's thoughts. And oh my gosh, is it a treat and a half to see these moments that Edward had in Midnight Sun where he's growling or he looks really upset about something and we're thinking, why? Because we're inside Bella's brain and Bella's going, why are you looking so pissed off over there, Edward? Nothing's happened. And in this book, we know exactly why he is pissed off. Anyway, I'm going to round up this spoiler-free section by saying, if you liked Twilight, loved, became obsessed, any of those three, Twilight, book number 1 in the Twilight Saga series, there is no you should. You have to read Midnight Sun. It is so worth it. It is. It may be long. It may only be a retelling of book 1. It may have an adult tone. There may not be any book 2, 3, or 4 of the retelling, but my goodness, is this so satisfying for fans of any nature, whether you're just a fair weather fan, someone who kind of likes it, someone who does like it, someone who loves it, or someone who is absolutely obsessed with the series. You need to read this book because there is so much that goes on in this book that helps to answer so many questions that, yeah, It's fantastic. There are limitations because it only retells book 1, but there is so much that goes on from Edward's perspective in book 1 that we didn't get to see, making it so worthwhile. That is the end of the spoiler-free section, so if you are going to be leaving us, I completely understand. Go ahead, read the book, and then come back and join us for the spoiler section, but I will let you go with peace, blessings, and so much love, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be my catch-up vlog, I believe. Maybe not. Who knows? Honestly. I don't know where this video is going to go in the month. So, anyway. It'll be something fun. I'll see you soon. But for those of you joining me for the spoiler section, we're going to jump into it right now. So let's go. Spoiler time. Spoiler time! Spoiler! This is the spoilery section. If you have not read this book, you have been warned. These spoilers! I'm giving everyone who hasn't read the book before enough time to click away from the video, but you've had enough time, okay? Because we're going to spoilers in 3, 2, 1, let's go. Oh my gosh, we need to talk about the family dynamic. How fantastic is the family dynamic in this book? Following Edward and seeing Edward have the discussions that he has with Esme. Oh my gosh, you can see how much of a mother figure she is to Edward. Yes, you see it from Bella's perspective in Twilight, but from Edward's perspective, not only do you see how Esme is around Edward when Bella is not there, but also you get to read her thoughts, hear her thoughts, and oh my gosh, she is such a mother figure to him, and it's so beautiful. Also, Emmett. Oh my gosh, I did not realize, and I don't know why, maybe because we were, again, from Bella's perspective, but I didn't realize how close Edward and Emmett are. That really surprised me, but I loved it. Oh my gosh, so fantastic. Alice. Okay, we need to talk about this. Alice knows she is going to be besties with Bella the day she spies Bella for the very first time. Bella's first day at school. And it's so much of her interactions with Bella once they do finally talk, which in this book takes forever, in Twilight takes a couple of chapters, but anyway, when they do finally talk, makes sense. Like, Alice's introduction to Bella is practically something along the lines of, "Hi Bella, oh don't worry, we're going to become best friends." And it's like, well, hang on, what the heck? You don't even know me, how are you going to know, how do you know we're going to be best friends? Not only do we subsequently in Twilight know that Alice has the gift of foresight, so she can have premonitions and whatever, she can see the future, she knows for sure it is locked in, they are going to become best friends, but she has known that they are going to become best friends for a long time, and like a little child, metaphorically, she's like grabbing, the pant leg of Edward, going, hey, let me talk to her, like a little immature child. Let me talk to her, she's gonna be my best friend. Let me talk to her. Why aren't you letting me talk to her? When can I talk to her? Let me talk to her. So when she finally does, she goes, it just spills out of her. Don't worry, we're gonna be the best of friends. Like, yeah, you can finally say it. Oh my gosh. Just Edward reading the minds in general, I loved having that experience, because it is one thing when you're reading Twilight and he says, this person is thinking this, or if he doesn't say what they're thinking, but he has a reaction, and like Bella, we're thinking, why are you reacting this way? What the heck is going on? And then in this book, we get to hear it all, because we are finally in Edward's mind. And I really wish that Stephanie Meyer would write the retellings of books 2, 3, and 4. But yeah, we get to hear Charlie's thoughts on Edward. We get to hear, oh my gosh, I can't even think of his name, but Jacob Black's father, I forgot his name. We get to hear his thoughts and why he's trying to tell Bella to stay away from Edward, even though, and I love this too, they bring up the whole treaty thing between the vampires and the werewolves in this book, and apparently the treaty, according to Edward's perspective, was put in place to protect the werewolves. So Edward's very surprised that the werewolves, both Jacob, although unknowingly, and Edward understands it's unknowingly, and his father, knowingly, treading very close to crossing that line of the treaty, and Edward's thinking, why are you doing this? This is in place for you. You cross this line, you guys are practically dead. Why are you doing this? But anyway, which not only is it fantastic to hear the thoughts that we weren't able to hear in Twilight, but the humour that comes with Edward's reaction in these scenes, because in this particular scene where Jacob Black's father is talking to Bella in her, I think it's her kitchen or something, I don't know if we know that Edward is there listening in Twilight, but in Midnight Sun, we're made aware of this. Edward goes outside the house and goes around the corner, and he's literally hiding and listening in to not only what's verbally being said, but what's not being said, but thought by Jacob Black's dad. And it's hilarious. It's great to get the information, the insight to what's going on in his mind, but also to get Edward's reaction to it. Mwah, pure gold. Pure gold. What else can I say? Rosalie, I need to touch upon this because we're going to run out of time really quickly, but Rosalie, the chat that Edward has with Rosalie I think they go off for a walk in the woods, and Edward doesn't say these words, but he's practically saying, okay, listen, what the hell's going on? Why do you have an issue with my girl? He doesn't say that, but he practically does say that in his own words. And she says to him, and I think eventually in the series we find this out anyway, but it's great seeing the actual conversation taking place. Rosalie says, we all know what's going to happen. We all know that Bella's going to want to become a vampire, so you're going to eventually turn her. And I just think it is disgusting and outrageous of her that she's going to, in her own words, I'm just paraphrasing here, that she's going to turn to a vampire where I didn't have a choice. I wish I was still human, and she's just going to throw it all away. That's why she's upset with Bella. That's why she doesn't like Bella. Because it comes across in Twilight like she doesn't like Bella because it's as though Rosalie doesn't think that Bella is good enough for Edward. But that's not the case. It's because Rosalie knows that eventually Bella is going to throw her human life away, and Rosalie would give anything to still be human. Oh my gosh. I loved that we got, it made Rosalie feel a lot more three-dimensional to me than the 2D edition we get of her in Twilight. So I didn't like Rosalie in Twilight at all, but I loved her in this book. I loved getting that explanation. I'm just trying to think if there's other things that I want to kind of sift through and cover. I don't really think so. As much as it was good to see the dynamic between Edward and Carlisle, we get a pretty good dynamic between Carlisle, Edward and Bella, and Carlisle and Bella, if that makes sense. So the three of them conversing, and then Bella and Carlisle having one-on-ones. So I feel like we get to know who Carlisle is, although there is one good thing where Carlisle was thinking something. They were having a chat, Carlisle and Edward, and he was thinking something about how Edward deserves someone great or something great. He's such a good kid, he deserves something good, or something along those lines. If you read the book, you know what I'm referring to. I just don't remember the specific details. But it was he deserves something good. And it's like, oh, Gary, he's the father figure. And you have to remember that Esme, I was going to call her Renesmee. No, completely different character. Esme and Carlisle are not Edward or Jasper or Emmett or Rosalie or Alice's biological parents. And frankly, at all. This is a mismatch, practically non-legal fostered adopted family situation, and yet it is genuinely a family, despite the fact that it really shouldn't legally hold up. It genuinely acts like a family. Alice and Rosalie are this, if we're looking from Edward's perspective, are his sisters. Emmett and Jasper are his brothers, and Carlisle and Esme are mum and dad, and he even calls them dad. He calls Esme mum, he calls Carlisle dad, which is wonderful to see as well. This book was just so fantastic. there's a massive what's the word, final climax, thank you, massive final climax towards the end where Edward is siphoning out the poison from the vampire that poisoned Bella at the end of Twilight, and how he's, he doesn't want to do it because doesn't know if he will stop drinking her or not, and from her or not be able to control himself, whatever. And I appreciated that whole scene. I appreciated seeing inside Edward's mind and his thoughts and feelings. Can he control himself? Can he not control himself? Bella's screaming because like she's on fire, but then she stops screaming, and so there's nothing that's stopping him from just keeping on going, because even Alice is trying to come through to him, but she sounds so soft, so he's just going to keep on going. The monster, as it's referred to, has fully pretty much taken over. I appreciated having that scene. But honestly, for me, what I loved most about this book were the dynamics that we got to see play out between Edward and his family. And so, to me, that final climax, which is meant to be the biggest moment of the book, and is certainly the biggest moment in Twilight itself, wasn't the biggest moment of the book. The biggest moments for me were talking to Rosalie in the woods, talking to Alice about Alice knowing practically in chapter 1, the first time she saw Bella, we're going to be best friends. Edward, why can't I talk to her? Why can't I talk to her? Like a little dog trying to jump on his leg. Why can't I talk to her? Why can't I talk to her? I love that so much. And so it makes sense that she says, we're going to be best friends the moment she meets Bella. The discussions he has with Emmett and how close they are, I will treasure that always, because I didn't get that perception. Perception in the first 4 books in the series, but definitely you do in this one. And oh my gosh. Anyway, I'm going to stop because otherwise this will become a 1-hour video. If you want more thoughts from me, then please feel free to let me know, and we can start a discussion about this that goes on for much, much longer. But I should leave it there because we've already gone over half an hour. So anyway, moral of the story is I found this to be absolutely fantastic. If you like, love, or are obsessed with the Vampire original canonical saga books, then you definitely should read this book, because it is a love letter to the fans. It gives you everything that you need and a heck of a lot more. And it is so worth every single one of those 756 pages. 5 stars from me. I absolutely loved it. What a fantastic way to start the year. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it. Letting you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy reading. Bye, everyone.